In a distant kingdom, a vain and wicked queen asked her enchanted mirror a daily question. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? The mirror replied, Snow White is the fairest of them all. Filled with rage, the queen's heart darkened. The queen plotted to rid herself of Snow White forever. The next day, the queen sent Snow White deep into the forest with the huntsman. The huntsman, unable to harm her, told Snow White to run. Snow White fled through the forest, frightened and alone. But the animals of the forest guided her to safety. They led her to a small cottage nestled in the woods. Curious, she entered the cottage, finding it unusually small. Inside, everything was neat but small. 7 little beds and a tiny table. Snow White, grateful, decided to clean the cottage. As evening fell, the owners of the cottage returned, 7 dwarfs. They were shocked to find Snow White asleep in their beds. Snow White awoke to find the 7 dwarfs staring at her. The dwarfs introduced themselves: Doc, Grumpy, Happy, Sleepy, Bashful, Sneezy, and Dopey. Snow White asked if she could stay with them, and the dwarfs agreed. Snow White began a new, happy life with the dwarfs. But the wicked queen soon learned Snow White was still alive. She decided to use dark magic to destroy Snow White. The queen crafted a poisoned apple, red and glistening with danger. She disguised herself as an old peddler woman. The disguised queen set off for the dwarf's cottage. The queen found Snow White alone in the garden. "Try this apple, dear," the queen said sweetly. Snow White took a bite, unaware of the poison within. She collapsed to the ground, lifeless. The wicked queen cackled in triumph. The dwarfs returned to find Snow White motionless. Grief-stricken, the dwarfs built a glass coffin for her. The animals of the forest gathered to mourn her. Meanwhile, the wicked queen returned to her castle, certain of her victory. Far away, a prince heard tales of the beautiful Snow White. He set out to find her, driven by love. At last, he arrived at the dwarf's cottage and saw her. Moved by her beauty, he kissed her gently. The spell broke, and Snow White opened her eyes. The dwarfs and animals rejoiced as Snow White stood. The prince and Snow White embraced, their love undeniable. But the wicked queen learned Snow White had survived once again. Her dark magic turned against her, and the queen was destroyed. The dwarfs thanked the prince for saving Snow White. Snow White bid the dwarfs farewell, promising to visit. Snow White and the prince rode off together to the prince's castle. News of their wedding spread across the kingdom. The prince's castle prepared for the grand wedding. Snow White was dressed in the finest gown for her wedding day. The wedding was held in a magnificent hall filled with guests. Snow White was crowned as the new queen. The 7 dwarfs attended, overjoyed for their dear friend. Snow White and the prince shared their first dance as husband and wife. The entire kingdom celebrated the union of their beloved princess. And so, Snow White and the prince lived happily ever after. Their love and kindness shone across the land forever. For more amazing stories, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.